My father emptied my safe and said, "Your brother's tuition comes first." I replied, then explained that to the IRS. That call cost them $36,000. We accepted $36,000. Liam's tuition comes first, my father explained after emptying my locked safe. Then explained that to the IRS. I yelled while filing a fraud report that ruined the entire family. When I returned to live with my parents, I planned to stay for perhaps 2 months, possibly 3 if things didn't change. I had just closed down a small business that I had worked hard on for 3 years. My girlfriend of 5 years ended our relationship 2 weeks after I sold it. I left our shared apartment with only a few bags and what little self-respect I still had. My parents lived in North Bridge Hills, in a house that I hadn't felt at home in since I was 19. Still, it felt familiar, and I didn't have many other options. I returned with the same peaceful, sleepy sense that many people experience after surgery: calm, hopeful, and trying not to feel ashamed. I assisted by purchasing groceries, fixing things around the house, and being silent. At dinner, I didn't say much unless someone asked me directly. My money was safe. It was $36,000 in cash, concealed in a little lockbox behind shoe boxes in my closet. I had gradually saved it over a 10-year period. It wasn't a large sum, but it was sufficient to keep me from falling too hard. The family gathering took place about 6 weeks after I returned home. Just the typical crowd: uncles, aunts, cousins, and children I didn't recognize. My father cooked on the grill. My mother made too much food. My younger brother, Liam, made a huge show of his arrival. He kept bragging about being accepted into this expensive liberal arts institution in Ashford Bay with a business course that no one had ever heard of, but everyone pretended to know. He hugged me strangely, tight and too long, as if he was already apologizing for something. That night, the house felt strangely quiet. Everyone was gone. The coffee machine had vanished. I went to my room to get a breath. For some reason, I strolled into the closet, moved the shoe boxes, and examined the safe. It appeared regular, locked, and undamaged, but I was apprehensive. I punched in the code. It beeped as usual. I turned the doorknob. It was totally empty. There was no money, paperwork, or anything. I stood for about a minute. Then I closed and reopened it, hoping that the funds would return. I began digging through the room, although deep down I knew it had been stolen. I heard someone approaching me. My father stood in the doorway clutching a coffee mug, as if he were just on a stroll. He claimed they had all discussed it and decided I shouldn't stay there for free because I wasn't contributing. He added that Liam had a future to plan for. They decided to take my savings and use them to cover his first college tuition payment. He smiled as if I should be proud of helping out. I told him I would hire a lawyer. I told him what he did was illegal and he had better hope I didn't take it any further. Then I said something I knew would upset him. "Then you won't care what comes next." He laughed. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. 37 missed calls, voicemails, and texts. My father yelled. My mother was freaking out. Liam begged me not to damage anything. I didn't respond. I had already departed before daylight, carrying a duffel bag, my laptop, and a printed document they had no idea existed. It was something from years ago with just enough legal heft to cause serious difficulty. I was already halfway to Blackwood Valley, on my way to Uncle Eugene's cabin. He responded after 2 rings. "They really pulled that crap, huh?" he commented. "Good. Now we make them regret it. Don't go back there." But I didn't. Not until it was time to help them understand what a true error looks like. Uncle Eugene's cabin was not an appealing vacation destination. It was a 2-story house in the deep forest, far from towns and cities. He had built the majority of it by hand after leaving a job in finance and deciding he was done with the contemporary world. The air smelled like pine, firewood, and petrol. There was no internet. There was no television, only a landline phone, a generator, and a silence that felt more real than anything I had heard in a long time. When I drove up the gravel drive, Uncle Eugene was already seated on the porch, drinking from a chipped mug and wearing a sweatshirt with cut-off sleeves. He didn't ask any questions, just nodded and replied, "Your room's upstairs." The next morning, we ate scrambled eggs and sausage on metal dishes while sitting on the porch. He lit a cigarette, despite his assurance that he had previously quit. Then, he instructed me to walk him through the entire matter. So I did. From the minute I noticed the money was gone, to my father's happy expression, To the moment they claimed it was a family choice to spend my savings to pay for my brother's college tuition. I recounted how my mother tried to portray it as a daring charitable action, and I informed him that Liam remained silent the entire time, as if it had nothing to do with him. Uncle Eugene did not respond right away. After a pause, he inquired whether I still had Grandpa's trust documents. I nodded. They were inside my purse. The trust wasn't large, about $80,000 in total, but it did include a provision that specifically safeguarded me against being financially exploited by relatives. That was never something I considered important. Not until now. Uncle Eugene stood up, strolled inside the cabin, and returned with a dust-covered folder. Inside were documents from previous years, including old deals, correspondence, and digital receipts. And there, in the midst, was a handwritten debt letter signed by my father in 2015. It showed that he had borrowed $36,000 from Uncle Eugene, exactly the same amount as what I kept hidden away. He never handed it back. Uncle Eugene said, "Always promised. Next paycheck, next raise, next bonus. I'm done waiting." That night, I called 3 people. The attorney who administered my trust, the family's bookkeeper who had never been a favorite of my father, and a legal buddy in Lakeside City who handled property law, a quiet, detail-oriented gentleman who owed me one. Things began to move the following day. All it took was an email with the required documents attached. My parents were officially notified by registered mail. I didn't concern myself with their response. 10 minutes later, Liam called me and asked, "What did you do?" I hung up without saying anything. I spent the following few days helping Uncle Eugene clear out the garage. That's when I discovered a box of old videotapes. Most were dusty and unlabeled, but one had tape over the front that read, "July 2002 Reunion." Later that night, I watched it simply to pass the time. My father was on film, shouting loudly in front of a bonfire while joking with 2 uncles. He was talking about how easy it was to move money without being tracked. At one point, he even stated, "If I wanted to steal from my children, they wouldn't notice." I stared at the screen, shocked. The next morning, I digitally copied the footage. I sent it to my attorney. I also shipped a flash drive containing the film to my mother without my name on it. 3 days later, she called me. She wasn't calling to apologize. She was begging. I sat at Uncle Eugene's cabin's kitchen table and listened to her message on speaker. She was crying so hard that she could scarcely complete her sentences. She stated she didn't understand what was going on, that everything was falling apart, and that I needed to stop before I destroyed the entire family. I let the voicemail play until the end and then deleted it. Uncle Eugene sat across from me drinking coffee. He remained quiet for a while. Then he glanced up and added, "Let's make this hurt." That was just what I needed to hear. I began with the trust. Everything moved quickly when the audit was triggered. The trust was legally secured against any familial misuse, and my parents had unintentionally triggered it by stealing my money. It wasn't only about my $36,000 anymore. Every asset related to Grandpa's estate had to be reviewed and validated. That included the automobile lease my parents obtained in Grandpa's name following his death, as well as the vacation home they had been covertly renting out for extra cash. In less than 2 days, a financial investigator had contacted them. I wasn't even involved in the phone calls, but I heard they were panicking. While that was happening, I made another move. When I first started my firm, I established a fictitious corporation named LMC Investments. I'd only used it once to send a joke invoice, but the account was legitimate and in Liam's name. It was perfectly legal and now extremely valuable. I investigated every unusual activity in that account, including the final $12,000 from my business, which had been moved right before I closed it down. With the documents I had, I made it appear as if Liam had hidden untaxed funds while applying for financial aid and college scholarships. I submitted anonymous complaints to both the university and the federal student aid office. On the 3rd day, Liam's school financing was paused for evaluation. His enrollment was canceled. They booted him out of his dorm and warned him not to return until the situation was resolved. He returned home that weekend. He called me 6 times and then began sending messages. He expressed confusion about what I was up to. He insisted he hadn't stolen anything. He told me that it wasn't fair. I ignored it all. I still had some things to accomplish. Uncle Eugene pulled out the binder again. We prepared, signed, and officially documented a debt request for the $36,000 my father borrowed from him 8 years prior. We added the unpaid interest and filed it with the local records office. Then we put a formal claim on their home. This wasn't my childhood home. It was the larger house they purchased after my father's career promotion, with the intention of selling it before retiring down south. Now, the house was under legal lockdown. It could not be sold, leveraged, or used for any transaction. 2 days later, an unknown number attempted to call me. It was my father. I did not pick up. I drove by the house instead. A moving truck was parked outside, but no boxes were loaded. My father was pacing in the yard, ranting into his phone. My mother sat on the porch, face buried in her hands. Liam leaned against the automobile as if he had no soul left. There was a black Mercedes SUV parked at the curb. I remembered when they received it. My mother had referred to it as a reward car and claimed it was for Liam's graduation, but the ownership documents were in his name. After examining government records, I learned that they had listed it as a school-related asset in their financial documents, and my father had signed as a co-owner. I submitted an anonymous report with the IRS under a fictitious name, including every document I had, fake college costs, concealed cash, and co-signed debts tied to scholarship funding. It did not take long for the system to detect it. The financial account was flagged. An audit was initiated. Then I made my final move. There was a small web portal in Glenmere that reported on local frauds and dubious family stories. It wasn't a massive platform, but it was well-read. I sent them an anonymous tip. I attached an old video of my father in 2002 joking about getting money from his own children. I also included the house lien, Liam's revoked aid letter, and the entire trust case file. I told them the tale was accurate and provided all of the evidence to back it up. They posted it the next morning. North Bridge Hill's family charged with financial crimes and inheritance fraud. The article circulated rapidly. A local news website picked it up. Someone uploaded it on Reddit. A former coworker of my father also reacted, claiming that the business had already been investigating him. That was all it took. By the end of the week, my father was placed on leave. When a news crew appeared outside their home, I received a message from Liam. 3 words, "Why now?" I didn't respond, but what I wanted to say was that he had watched them hurting me and just stood there. That evening, Uncle Eugene gave me a Pepsi. We didn't chat much. We sat silently watching the sky become orange behind the trees. Then he said, "This is only the beginning, kid." It was more than just one blog post. It was the storm that followed. When the news broke, things went from creeping damage to complete collapse. My father's image was blurred in the article, but people figured it out. His employers, golf club members, and neighbors all figured it out. A girl I hadn't heard from in years messaged me, "Your parents are falling apart, huh?" Yikes. But it was no longer about feeling ashamed. Now they were losing control of everything. 3 days after the story was published, Uncle Eugene received a call from someone he knew in the estate court. It turned out that my father had submitted something new. He claimed that the trust had been abused, that Grandpa's will was faulty, and that the entire situation needed to be reviewed again. It was a frantic swing, one final uncontrolled grasp for control. Uncle Eugene laughed as he heard it. He replied, "Let him go for it. He has no idea what we're sitting on." And he truly didn't, because I hadn't used the 2007 video, a home movie from Thanksgiving shot in our old house. My father was talking with one of his brothers about the additional money he'd been getting from private clients who only accepted cash. He boldly said he had never reported any of it. He described how he moved the money through accounts in his children's name so that no one would notice. He even stated on film that he opened a bank account in my name without telling me about it. I converted the video into a digital file and covertly submitted it to the IRS agent who was already working on the case. But that wasn't what crushed my mother. The bank records were the final straw for her. Uncle Eugene advised me to file a formal request for historical financial data related to the fictitious company LMC Investments. I figured we'd discover some weird deposit. That was all. But what I wasn't expecting was what we discovered about my mother. For over a year, she had been quietly moving little amounts. $300 here, $150 there, directly from her personal account to that bogus one. I didn't have to do anything else. When the university's financial aid department evaluated the entire record, they did not just suspend his benefits. They permanently cut him off. Liam was not placed on hold. He was completely removed. His funding was canceled. His file was classified as fraudulent. 2 days later, Liam arrived at Uncle Eugene's cabin. I didn't realize he was approaching. He appeared smaller than before, more worn, as if he had been through a lot. We stood outside while Uncle Eugene remained inside to give us privacy. Liam inquired, "Do you dislike me?" I answered him, "No, I just don't care anymore." Then he said something I did not expect. He informed me that our mother had moved into the guest bedroom. Our father was not speaking with anyone. They had recently gotten a warning from the IRS regarding unpaid taxes and a full audit. He stated that Mom had begun looking for work. Dad had quit shaving completely. Then came the surprise. "I found something in Dad's drawer," Liam explained. "You should see it." He handed me a sealed packet. Inside was a typed letter dated 2009 and addressed to Grandpa rather than me. It was a written confession. My father had borrowed $5,000 from Grandpa and promised to repay it within 5 years. He never returned a penny. The statement at the bottom of the letter hit me like a slap. "If you tell him or Eugene, it will tear this family apart." It was never just about money. It was all about manipulation, control, and appearances. Liam fled without asking for forgiveness. He did not shed a tear. He did not attempt to explain. He just stated, "I had no idea they were doing all this." I swear. Later that evening, Uncle Eugene read the letter and stated, "Your dad's not just a liar. He's spineless." Then he smiled and asked, "Want to wrap this up? I've still got one more play left." What he said next transformed the game. At first, I wasn't concerned with generating headlines. I didn't mind if my parents cried, if my brother had to miss school, or if strangers muttered about us at the store. All I wanted was to get my money back. They grabbed $36,000 from my locked safe, as if it were nothing. I had saved money for nearly 10 years through side gigs, freelance work, and skipping things when I was broke. I had plans for the money, safety, freedom, the future. They treated me as if I were merely a faucet that they could drain. That's what sparked the fire in me. But now it had evolved into something new, bigger, faster, and entirely out of their control. I had started a chain of events, and things were escalating quickly. But even after the shell business, the IRS complaints, the house lien, the eviction notice, and the viral news item, I still hadn't received my money. Uncle Eugene warned me, "If you don't recover the cash, it's all just noise," he added. So, I went back through everything. Transaction records, statements, anything I could find. And there it was, detailed inside a normal-looking bank summary under Liam's name. An account holding slightly over $38,500. The bank's name did not look familiar. I checked the routing number. It was not from Northbridge Hills. It was from Rivermount, another branch of the same bank where my father worked before he was promoted. I called the bank and pretended to be Liam, claiming I couldn't access my account and needed to reset everything. They asked for some basic information to verify my identity. I already knew everything: his birth date, the last 4 digits of his social security number, and his address history. I'd lived with him. I had witnessed him fill out employment applications. They granted me temporary access. And there it was. $38,500 sat undisturbed under the heading Education Disbursement Reserve. It wasn't scholarship cash. It wasn't loan assistance. That was my stolen savings, transferred to a clandestine account, and then parked there, most likely as a backup in case school became more expensive. Uncle Eugene and I called his attorney, filed an official restitution demand, and supported it with trust documentation and financial records. However, we were both aware that legal processes are slow. So, I took an unexpected action. I went directly to their residence. There was no warning, no communication, and I knocked as if nothing had happened. My mother opened the door. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I asked to speak with my father. He approached the doorway with his arms folded, an attitude of concrete. I looked him in the eyes and told him I'd found the money, and he now had 2 options: return every dollar within 48 hours, or I'd take the case to civil court. I'd file charges for theft and financial deceit, and I'd incorporate the old VHS recording to add weight. I informed him that the trust team was preparing a comprehensive property seizure. Every account, asset, and suspicious transfer was going to be probed. I told him I didn't want stories or bogus apologies. I only wanted my money. He said nothing, not one word, just stood there. I walked away. 2 days later, I received an alert from my bank. A direct transfer had arrived totaling $36,000. No comments, no names, and no memos. It was just the money. But that didn't please me because I already knew the truth. It wasn't guilt that forced him to pay. It was terror. Uncle Eugene smiled at me and said, "Let's make him even more scared." So now I had the money, on paper at least. $36,000 deposited directly into my account. No apologies, no message, exactly what I desired. It was the quickest action my father had done in years. When I told Uncle Eugene, he prepared hot tea for both of us. He lifted his cup and said, "That's something, but if you think he's done, you don't really know your father." He was correct. That night, sometime after 2 a.m., I received a text from my mother. Just one line, "He's about to post about you." I did not grasp it at first. However, 2 hours later, someone I hadn't communicated with since high school wrote me a message. It was a Reddit link. A throwaway account posted a lengthy rant in a parenting community. The title was all I needed to see. "Our son stole our future and is attempting to destroy our life. Warning to other parents." It was a heated diatribe. He described me as lazy, selfish, and worthless. He said I came home with little, refused to help, scorned their generosity, and shattered Liam's ambitions. He claimed I abused the system by using threats, dodgy lawyers, and old family feuds to my advantage. He even accused Uncle Eugene of inciting me against them. That line nearly had me laughing, but the ending was the strangest. He wrote, "If anyone knows how to stop a grown child from destroying your family name, please message me. I am serious." I did not respond. I did not need to. Reddit did the work. Strangers trashed his post. They linked to the news item, uploaded screenshots of proof, and utterly humiliated him. It got to the point where he deleted the entire profile less than half a day later. I backed up everything in case I needed it. But that moment was the final straw for me. I informed Uncle Eugene I was finished reacting. I did not want to be a part of it anymore. Not just the house, not just the family title. I wanted out of the entire heritage. So, I finally did something I had been thinking about for weeks. I officially applied to change my surname. It wasn't a big deal, just a simple document at the clerk's window and a few certified approvals. But when I stepped outdoors, it felt as if someone had cut a rope around my neck that had been there for far too long. 2 days later, I grabbed my belongings and relocated to a little flat in my neighborhood. Nothing special, just a quiet unit on the corner of the top floor of a 3-story walk-up. It featured a fire escape and an old heating system that trembled when it ran, but it felt like mine. I bought a second-hand couch from Craigslist, some used vinyl albums from a resale shop, and hooked up my old sound system. I listened to the same album over and over for days. I did not tell my parents where I went. I did not leave an address. I changed my phone number and blocked any lines that led to their location. They had no way of getting in touch. The only thing I left behind was a secured file on my laptop in case I ever felt the need to contact them. Inside was a single message: "You taught me to stand my ground." Then you pretended to be astonished when I did. But I was not angry. I felt free. Uncle Eugene was just getting started. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode.